Give people the opportunity to do easy things like rate and review, um, Google reviews, follow your social media, all of these things, because your best advocates and your best brand ambassadors are going to be the people who already went through that funnel and are now happily on the other side and are willing to tell people about it. Welcome to Bullhorns and Bullseyes, the podcast where precision meets promotion. I'm Tom Nixon.
And I'm Curtis Hayes.
We're thrilled to have you join us as we discuss the ever-evolving world of sales and marketing. Every week, Curtis and I bring our own specific experiences and expertise, along with a special guest who has stories to tell and lessons learned to share. We're here to help you with strategies that hit the mark and amplify the marketing. Before we kick off today's episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop. And if you find our discussions on target, leave us a review. Your feedback means a lot to us. Now get ready for insights, tips, and conversations that will up your marketing game. It's Bullhorns and Bullseyes with Curtis Hayes and Tom Nixon. Let's ride. Welcome back, everyone, to Bullhorns and Bullseyes. I am Tom Nixon, joined as always by my co-host Curtis Hayes. Curtis, how are you?
Howdy, folks. How we doing?
That's on brand. That's what I like to hear, partner.
Doing great today. Yeah.
Good. Well, speaking of on brand, we're going to be talking about some Bullhorns and Bullseyes again today. And I wanted to pick up something that you and I discussed with our previous guest, which was Kate Simon. And we were talking about sales, but as we often do, we were combining sales and marketing into thinking of it as one concept. And she made a really salient point that I thought was a good jumping off point for us to kind of dive deeper into it. And it was in relation to the sales funnel. So I thought maybe we would just pause before we dive into the conversation, just for those who aren't intimately familiar with the sales funnel, just a kind of high level description. I'll use my own. I know there's many others. You might have a different one. And I think various guests on the show have used different acronyms, but it goes something like this. So if you picture a funnel, right, you have people outside of the funnel that aren't yet aware of your brand or your service or your product or even you, and they're not in the funnel yet, right? And then once they go from unaware to aware, they're at the top of the funnel. And if you think of the funnel as 4 sections, is typically how I do it, and they are AIDA, and I use that acronym because it's the name of a musical. So it's like, I can remember that. So the first A is aware. And what you're trying to do is get people down the sales funnel to the bottom, because the bottom A is action, and that's a sale typically. From aware, you go from unaware to aware, you're in the funnel. Aware, you're at the top of the funnel. You get further down, you're interested. And maybe one of our prior guests mentioned that you're now getting to the point of preference. So I call this interested. So they're interested in buying, but they haven't yet taken the action at the bottom of the funnel. And then the D in my vernacular is the decision. They've eliminated the competition, and now they have decided on you and your product and your service. Then that leads to action. So that's how I typically, is that pretty close to how your sales funnel typically tracks?
Yeah. Well, I would say there's maybe 2 funnels, your marketing funnel and your sales funnel. Okay. So
Yep.
you could combine them, and oftentimes the marketing team might be looking at one funnel, which is those who are unaware and bringing them into aware. And then once they come in as a lead, then you might have the sales funnel where now we're taking them from a lead down to a qualified lead, down to a opportunity, down to an account and customer. But my methodology, similar to yours, which I've used from a data analytics perspective to help a client visualize all of the data that we're collecting from a marketing perspective, is called RACE. RACE.
That's easy to remember too, I will concede.
Yep. So the RACE model, which I didn't come up with, there's a marketing insights organization out that came up with this. So it's reach, which is kind of like the aware, go out and find people, make them aware, reach. Act, which is to get them to take some sort of action on the website, right? So kind of in that journey storytelling we talked about, that journey driven storytelling. It's like, okay, they land on the page. How are you getting them to take some sort of action prior to the conversion? Whether
Right.
that's dig in further, click a button to dig in further, add a product to the cart, whatever that might be. Then C is convert.
Real quick, I was just going to point out that your A maps to the I. So
Okay.
that is the interest. So if they're
Right.
interested, they start clicking around. They might even
Exactly.
download a lead magnet. I'm starting to not like that word, but they might take some other action to demonstrate interest. So go ahead.
Correct. Yep. And so then C is convert.
Mhm.
So that's going to be fill out a lead gen form, sign up for a webinar, download a white paper, something like that. So now they're in the sales funnel once they've converted. And then from a marketing perspective, we want to engage those people who do convert. And so, what are we doing to nurture those leads, whether that's if they're subscribed and we're doing a newsletter, or what I often find most importantly is to turn those people who have converted maybe into ambassadors, where they then go and help other people come into the funnel, right? So, share on social media, leave a testimonial or a review, something like that. So, now we've used that simply to just take metrics that we are collecting from an analytics perspective and put them at those stages. So a customer can visualize the marketing efforts like, hey, we're bringing more traffic to the website. So that's going to be at the top of the funnel. They're doing things on the website. So that's the next page and our next stage. Then they're converting, they're filling out forms, they're making phone calls, those types of things. And then once that, then okay, how are they interacting with your newsletter? How are they interacting with social media? Are you getting more shares? Are you getting more testimonials and reviews? All of those other types of things. So now you can put the data at the different stages and map that to how well a brand might be doing. Is your reach improving? Is your engagement on your website improving? Are your reviews improving? And those different stages. So, yep.
Yeah, and that is you're kind of leading to the salient point that I thought Kate made, and I hadn't heard it articulated this way. But she says knowing where your prospect is in that funnel where they self-identify in terms of their journey towards maybe a purchase but maybe not is key to understanding how, when, and where to market to them. She used the example because she's in real estate, so I'll build on it. Use myself as an example. My wife and I visited a town in the west side of the state that we live in, and we were considering someday maybe buying a place there. Right, it's not going to happen anytime soon, but we knew nothing about the market. We knew nothing about the price points. We knew nothing about what are the good areas, what are the not so good areas, where should we be focusing our efforts. And so, who would I call for something like that? But an agent or a broker. But I was afraid to reach out to an agent or broker because I wasn't ready to even consider. I'm not, I may be interested, but I'm nowhere near decision yet. And I'm like, I don't want to A, waste their time. And B, I don't want to get now hounded by an aggressive agent who thinks I'm a hot lead. So instead, we just winged it and we were on our own and it wasn't all that effective. But what if an agent knew that about me and I could tell them, is there something that the agent could do besides ruining a Saturday of their lives, walking us around town when we have no, pending purchase in the offing? Is there something else we could have done? And I think that's how marketers need to think. Not every lead is a hot lead, and you can't. It's not pass or fail. So, are there? What are some of the things? So now you're talking about measuring. And can you measure with specificity or make some conclusions based on data that you have that says these types of leads are at this point in the journey and they need this type of nurturing, where others are raising their hand and saying, how do I buy? Something's in my cart and I can't find the checkout button, proverbially.
Yeah, oftentimes we do it, especially in lead gen, with a question on a form.
Mm-hmm.
So just simply posing a question of where they might be in their purchase decision. Um, so in your example, the question could be, are you looking to purchase this new home in the next, and then leave some ranges, right?
Mm-hmm.
30 to 90 days, 90, 3 months to 6 months, 6 months to a year, past a year, whatever. So something simple like that, that now that salesperson, when they get that lead, has some context to when they pick up the phone. It's like, okay, Mr. Nixon, I see you're interested in a new home, but this looks like a future home for your family. where are you guys at in that decision versus like, hey, can I take you to show you homes this weekend? Right.
Right.
It's a
Yep.
totally different intro to the conversation, which hopefully gets things set up on the right foot. Right.
Exactly. It's this now we're morphing into where I think content lives up and down the funnel, whether it's a sales funnel or a marketing funnel. We talk about bullhorns and bullseyes. So getting back to the meta content of our this episode is so typically you would think that bullhorn activities live on the outside of the sales funnel at the very top. You're trying to make more and more people aware it's possible, right? Because no one's going to buy from you if they've never heard of you. So you're breaking down that awareness barrier. So it's easy to think of content and marketing and bullseyes up there. But I think in this case, I think content, there's a strong argument to be made that some of your content should be middle of the funnel content. So, for example, let's say I called an agent and said, okay, maybe someday my wife and I may relocate here. Do you have 4 hours today to show us around? And the agent's probably going to say, cold lead. No, I'm kind of booked up today.
Right.
But what if that person had the ultimate user's guide to shopping in Harbor Country, Michigan? And it had the best locations, it had school data, it had best restaurants, nightlife, recreation, and it was a branded guide that that person could send me. Say, I can't make it today, but let me send you this booklet that will be your tour guide since I can't make it today. Now, let's say I take that and I know I follow the advice, and now I feel like, all right, if we're going to buy this home someday, it's going to be in this specific neighborhood because it's right by this restaurant that we can walk to, and it's close to this and this and this and this. And then when I'm ready to purchase 3 years later, who am I going to call?
Hmm.
The authority who put that content together. So I think, and I'm curious your take on this because I think of you as a lead gen ninja. I've used that word before, but let's not flatter you too much. A lead gen
Cowboys and
specialist.
ninjas.
Yeah. A lead gen specialist. So, what is your take? How do you advise clients to think in terms of not everything is a pass fail, right? It's not like, oh, they didn't buy today, so that's done. That's no longer a lead.
Right. I think it's difficult because the organization oftentimes is measured by the lead volume, and then of course sales is measured by pipeline. And it's like if we're not getting opportunities that are hitting the pipeline, then we're falling short, right? So it's you do have to think long term when you're doing these efforts, especially the bullhorn efforts, and they don't um, especially in B2B. I think that I see a lot of clients now who are doing what we would call account based marketing. So they would call it ABM is the acronym for it. And in account
Hmm.
based marketing, like the account you're going after. So let's say you're in healthcare and there's 40 health systems that you have a product that you want to sell to these top health systems in the country, and there's a large buying committee that's a part of that, a CFO who's probably making the final decision, but then physicians and purchasing agents and all that. This was Stephanie's background, right? We had that episode with Stephanie where she did this.
Right.
And it takes 6 months to 2 years plus maybe to sell a product in that area. But there's so much educating that, like, you have these leads, but educating these leads along the way makes them trust you and then want to buy from you. So what your specific example, which is simplified, is basically showing that when you gain trust from a prospect, then that prospect's going to call who they trust, and you can build trust through content. If the content, and this is, I think, the caveat, which we've mentioned quite a few times in these podcasts, is authentic. There's
Right.
authenticity behind it, right? So you're perfect. Like, I have a friend that's, where we vacation up north. I won't mention it because it's kind of a little secret, and I want to keep it a secret because someday I
I
want to
should
buy
have mentioned.
something there.
I should have mentioned my secret either because it's going to get out. But
Yeah.
we'll
But
delete that.
I have an agent, real estate agent friend that is in that area, and we would obviously use them when we go and buy up there. But um, you know, that trust that you establish with that person, and that person is, like, I think the word that's often used is an authority. So they know the neighborhoods, they know the market, they know the reps and other agents they would be up against, right? And can negotiate for you and do different things, right? So there's going to be all these different factors that's going to prove to you that this is the right person to work with, and being able to get that content and educate that customer for when they are ready to buy, they're who you're going to call. And we mentioned this, I think, with Kate, is like you've already done 60+% of the sales process up till that point with all the educating you do. So now once you get on the phone with them, selling them is so much easier.
Right. Yeah, and along the way, you're starting to elbow out the competition who aren't doing those types of activities. I had a client, and I won't mention their name either, but the CMO issued a mandate that did did not want to invest any marketing efforts or dollars into anything that was not specifically visible in HubSpot. And this is a company who's selling to the public sector. It's at the minimum a 6-month sales cycle, but typically it's more like 3 years. It's incredibly difficult to displace entrenched incumbent vendors. Um, and I'm thinking, you think you can, by the way, it's a 6 to 7 figure dollar purchase, right? That has to go through a bid process anyway. And
Hmm.
I'm thinking, you think something's going to happen only in HubSpot to deliver that prospect to your doorstep? I'm like, you have no idea how this process is going. I can tell you, I don't know how, because not all of it's attributable. We
Right.
talked about marketing attribution, right? Not everything is perfectly visible in a straight line from I received a download and then I called you with my credit card in my hand. So, how do you measure the unmeasurable? I know that's kind of a difficult question. I'm putting you on the spot, but because of so much of marketing activity, as you said, is being happen in areas that you don't even know or don't have access to, are there ways to measure whether your activities are having any impact?
Yeah. So the bullhorn activities, oftentimes we measure with brand. So one of the things that we'll do at the top of the funnel is measure brand search volume. So are brand impressions increasing or decreasing over time based off communication efforts that we're doing? We could pull that data from like Google Search Console. So that would be at the top of our funnel
So that's somebody specifically searching for your company,
for your company, right? So let's say you're
company
doing
name.
billboards.
Right.
Then, it's like, okay, we're running billboards. How are we going to measure that? Well, there's potentially two ways. One could be the brand, the other could be a unique phone number that might be on it, if there is a phone number or something like that.
Hmm.
So, yes, everything's not trackable, but there are things that you're doing that could influence trackable behavior. And we want to sort of infer um, your movement in specific areas based off of activities that you could be doing, right? So,
Right.
um, say you were going to do some thought leadership and organic and maybe some paid, but that doesn't lead to clicks in LinkedIn. Well, then we might want to take a look at the top uh, people within the organization who are doing a lot of the
Mhm.
content. Are they increasing their number of followers? Are we increasing engagement on their content? So being able to pull that data to basically show whether or not efforts we're doing are actually reaching our a growing audience, and if people are interacting and engaging with that content.
Yep. So that's measuring the unmeasurable at the top of the sales funnel. I mean, you and I are both old enough to remember when these digital tools didn't exist, right? And people were still advertising all the time on
Right.
TV, radio, newspapers, and not everything was a clip this coupon, bring it in, and mention code word, kaleidoscope to get your 10% discount. Those were ways to track back then. But there were other times, the old saying that, I know that advertising accounts for 50 or half of my business. I just don't know which half.
Yeah.
There's still some of that blind faith, and I know this could sound like snake oil to the uninitiated, but there is some blind faith that still has to be invested in a brand marketing campaign. Would you agree?
Yeah, you need a little patience. And then, another way you could track it is to ask again on a form, or as you're bringing that prospect in, you ask the question, how did you hear about us? And that could be a field in your CRM that the person, selects. And now you can pull that data in, say, oh, hey, we ran an radio ad this last month, and we show in the pipeline there were 10 new prospects that said they heard us on the radio, right? So
Mhm.
again, you could still have another 10 that heard you, but also did a Google search and they mentioned the last thing they did and said Google search, right? So
Right. Yep.
it's not 100%, and you're never going to get true attribution all the way across, but you can get some things that lead you to determine, hey, there are certain things that are working. And if you see no movement at all or declines in, say, pipeline amount or in leads when doing an unmeasurable activity, then you can maybe infer, after you've had some patience and waited a little while, that that maybe this activity isn't working.
Yeah. So once we get to the bottom of the sales funnel now,
Before
however
we
you
get to the
define it.
bottom, can I bring up
Oh
one
yeah,
point? And this
certainly.
is this is just I just thought of this as we were talking. Um, Before you get into any funnel marketing, you when we talk about like those who are aware and unaware, you first have to define your ICPs,
Hmm,
right? So don't say your customer is everyone or anyone, and you're
right.
marketing to everyone.
Yeah.
Like, because
Right.
anyone can be a prospect. It's like, okay,
That's
yes, but who do you want to spend your time on? And I think that's what I was thinking about as we were talking about the funnel and like, people being sold partway through just through your marketing, is that only really works if they're your ICP. So the real estate example, like, they might have come through your marketing, but if they're not interested in a location you specialize in, they liked your other stuff, then they're maybe not a good lead, right? So
yeah.
you do really have to understand who your ideal customer is before you start to build a funnel and you start to do marketing, and then you can line up all the other things that we've talked about, like why, how, what messaging, and advertising platforms you should be in, and doing audience targeting and all that other stuff. But without the ICP, like, it just doesn't really work. It doesn't work
It,
well anyway.
right.
And it's
Yeah,
going to
and there's a
set the
lot.
salespeople up for success too, because now they're selling to the right people.
Right. Yeah, and I was going to say there's could be a lot of waste in your marketing budget if you're not focused on the ICP's
Right.
ideal customer profile. Um, I'm glad you paused because we didn't fully explore the middle of the funnel. And going back to the point that Kate made, so I think what smart brands do is they set up varying types of nurturing campaigns. These could be email automation sequences that automatically, so somebody fills out, subscribes to a newsletter, say they're not ready to buy, but they want to be kept informed. There's an automatic response thanking them, but maybe they get put into a sequence where they receive 3 or 4 emails, all give. So in this case, they're still just maybe aware, they're not yet interested, and certainly aren't deciding, but you're just giving them information. It's data, it's analysis, it's just help, it's education, as you always like to put it. Then there's the people who maybe take a different action, who should be in a different, let's just stay on email sequences for a while, but there's other ways to nurture these leads. Somebody who's hits request a demo, right? That's a different button. That's a different hand raise. That's a different level of sequence. So going back to what Kate says is you need to not only know where these people self-identify in this funnel, but then have multiple ways. It's not one size fits all. To your earlier point, not everybody gets the hey, sign up for a demo email because not everyone's there yet, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your website either needs to communicate that well, through journeying users,
Hmm.
or your marketing. We're doing this quite a bit now in LinkedIn with our advertising campaigns of, say, uh, whether you're gating or ungating thought leadership and educational content, great. And then let them noodle on that before you do a lead gen campaign that's then, oh, hey, do you want to speak to somebody in sales? Do you want a demo? Do you want to learn more?
Hmm.
Um, because, yeah, not everybody's at the same place in their purchasing journey, right? we
Yep.
we might have a little bit of pain right now, but it might not be full pain, or budget might not be open yet to make that decision. I've got to wait till the end of the year. So you never know where people are at, but yeah, you do want to potentially get their info, or get them into that nurturing cycle, so that when they are ready, you're the company they're thinking of.
Yep, exactly. And Kate did point out too, and I thought was smart, is that the inverse is also true, right? So if somebody is urgent, you don't want to send them a thank you for subscribing to our newsletter and then never hear back from them, right?
Right.
Some people are like, how do I buy right now? So you just need to have your antennas up. I think you have to have your measurements in place, like you said, and then you have to have multiple streams or touch journeys that facilitate where they are today and where they want to go and when. So,
I think
and
one
if they,
thing that's missed in that process too, that I see quite frequently, are the people who are answering phones. So,
mm,
like lately, this is a trend we've seen that prospects are filling out less forms than they ever have in the past and choosing to call organizations more. It's like people aren't using chat as much as they used to. Like we're fighting against this AI sort of driven automated, right? So
mm,
it's almost like users have had enough automation and we want to go back to human contact, right? So we've just seen phone call volumes increase. But what we've noticed over time is that organizations have put less focus on the person answering the phone,
mm,
and that person is now critical to figuring out, why is that person calling? Does that person who answered the phone even know what's happening from a marketing perspective, that we're even doing campaigns, that we're putting out
right.
the content and whatever? And somebody calls with a specific question, hey, I saw this or I heard this radio ad or whatever, and I want to, talk to somebody to help me. If they don't know how to direct that call, you've just lost that prospect.
I've seen it
Because
happen
they're maybe not
this week.
calling that specific realtor, they're calling, the front desk, who then has to route them. And or maybe you don't have a system to, like, we've had issues where, like, there was no voicemail system, they weren't able to transfer calls from one location to another location, just weird technical things that then now you're losing prospects because you can't facilitate their need right now.
Yeah. This kind of explains why it semi shivered when I used the term lead magnet earlier. Is because people's, I think now antennas are up, right? Give us your email address and I'll give you something for free. Okay. Or am I getting on some list and you're just going to spam me? Right. And so I think people they're raising their guards a little bit. And so you might have a good lead that is reticent to share their information with you simply because they know what's coming. So I'm now trending again, the way things are trending back to the phone. My own personal preference, both as a user and as a marketer, is to remove any friction at the top and middle of the sales funnel from somebody getting your best ideas. So if you really do have a good lead magnet, don't gate it at the top of the sales funnel. Maybe right at the middle to lower part where you think, somebody is going to take an action like request a demo, and maybe the requested demo gets rewarded with a lead. And now they're in a different automation, they're in a different place, all of that stuff, different sales process.
Here's my advice on that: ungate content that doesn't have any, like, proprietary data or insights in it. If you're just
Mm,
regurgitating thought leadership, great. Educate all you want about that and maybe in your unique position on that topic, but don't gate that. Now, if you have data and insights that
mm,
are intellectual property that your company has because you've surveyed an audience, you surveyed customers, you have a software platform where you've collected data, and now you're sharing that data, now you can gate it
and
because
should.
it's sort of proprietary. Nobody else has that information but you. And now people sort of like, oh, you have some interesting, information here. Like, I just downloaded this digital ads benchmark report from a company called Tin Uiti, Tinuiti. But
Not an advertiser, or we would know how to pronounce their name.
yeah, I don't. I have no clue how to pronounce their name, but somebody else put something out that they do this quarterly trends for Google, Meta, Amazon, and advertising. So our spend's increasing, decreasing, what do CPCs look like in different industries? They've got the data. So I gave them my name, email address, and company so I could get that research, right? if
Yep.
uh, if they just had a white paper out talking about that wasn't necessarily trends, but just talking about Google Ads in general, well, I've got lots of places I can go and get information about Google Ads. So why would I? Why are they gating that? Why would I give them my information in order to read that content? But now they've got something proprietary in a way.
Yep.
and I want to see that. So I'm willing to give them my information. So think about that with your company, like, and you can utilize that. This is like capital sort of equity that you have to pull in prospects.
Right. Yep. Great point. Great point. Okay, so we're at the bottom of the sales funnel now, and we're trying to close or close somebody to the final action, which is a sale. Hopefully, depends on what your business is or product is, but typically a sale. And I brought up the point, I believe, when we were talking to Kate, that now content goes from content marketing to potentially content business development. So the prospect is close to weeding out competitors or deciding on a small few, and now it's the decision has been made to purchase from somebody. Now we want to make sure that that purchase is that somebody is you, essentially. And I think content has a place down here as well, which isn't always like asking for the sale or closing. Good salespeople know how to do that. But an example that you provided in the past was maybe now there's some clarifying questions near the end of a bid process, and somebody wants to know, Curtis, how would you handle this migration to Google Analytics 4 or something? I don't know, right? And so, or how would you handle um, if we started doing content marketing with you, how would you approach it up and down the sales funnel? Say, okay, well, here's my short answer, but let me follow up with a podcast episode. Tom and I just recorded this the other day. Let me send it to you, and if you've got a half hour on the way home from your work today, listen to that. That's a piece of content that you could share with them. It's right at the bottom of the sales funnel. It opens a window into your expertise. It opens a window into a lot of things if it's podcast, because now you can see us, hear our bad jokes, hear our good puns, all the great stuff. And now maybe that person has established a rapport with you and thinks that they know you, which we've heard time and time again. The first time people meet us, sometimes they say, I feel like I know you. I've been listening to your podcast. So that's, I know, one of your favorite examples of content living at the bottom of the sales funnel.
Yeah, what did Dave Tier? I think he says, "Know you, like you, trust you," right? So
Yep.
the the content gives the prospect the opportunity to get to know you a bit more. It could be written content. It doesn't have to be a podcast or a video or something
Correct.
like
Yep.
that. It could still be written.
Mhm.
It could be you've got an email newsletter you're sending out, and there was something that was in that newsletter that they didn't get because they weren't subscribed to it at the time. That you could go and fetch that piece of content now. It lives in your
Mhm.
arsenal, and say, "Hey, I have actually addressed this in a newsletter recently. Let me forward that to you. Do you mind?" And and now they're in this sort of window, getting into your head a little bit of your approach, which is going to be your unique selling prop. There's 100 different companies out there that can likely solve the problem that this person has, but they're coming to you to help solve that problem. So it's that whole like, why should I choose you now? And so that know you, like you, trust you really comes into play here. And what we've seen, right, and some of the interactions that we've had with prospects lately is the podcast is achieving that. This know you, like you, trust you. They get to listen or watch and get into our heads a little bit and how we operate and how we approach things, and then determine, hey, is this a good fit or not? And I certainly have sent prospects our content and not heard back from them. Like, it's
Sure.
not that you're going to win 100%, but now I'm
No.
like, maybe they didn't really like our approach. So would that have been a
And maybe
good
that's not
fit?
a good fit client.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
right. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It could have been the cowboy hat, blew the deal,
It could have been.
but it seals other deals
It
probably.
does.
Yeah. Um, so we're not done at the bottom of the sales funnel, by the way. And this is something I think a lot of companies neglect to do is to think, Joseph Jaffe has a book called Flip the Funnel, and you think about your best customers who are now already taking the action, the relationship should not start there. They're going to, or stop there. It should start there. Again, because they are your biggest advocates. They can tell your story, maybe even ways better than you, or at least more authentically. And you need to find ways to leverage those voices and have them now go out to market and tell your story. So you could be doing like video interviews with clients, and putting them on your website. You could, in this podcast, our very first guest was a client of yours for multiple years.
Mhm.
Give people the opportunity to do easy things like rate and review, um, Google reviews, follow your social media, all of these things, because your best advocates and your best brand ambassadors are going to be the people who already went through that funnel and are now happily on the other side and are willing to tell people about it.
Yeah, Michelle Blakely talked about going to your ICPs, your best customers. You got those customers who like perfectly fit that customer profile, and if they're a perfect fit, they likely know other companies that are a perfect fit because they might be doing business or friends with or whatever. And that's one of the things you do. That was a whole episode we talked about on referrals. Is those are you don't go to every single customer of yours and ask for referrals. Start with your best three. You're like, man, these are
Hmm.
great clients. Go to those three and say, hey, do you know anyone else who's like you that's in your circle of business relationships or friends that could use our product or service? And
Yeah.
you know, um, it, so 100%. That's that engagement at the bottom of the funnel. That's, how do you turn those customers into ambassadors for your brand? And I've grown my business that way. It's all come from referrals.
Yeah.
Whether they tell another company or they were at a company and they left that company and went somewhere else, and now they're at that company and they have a similar problem. It's like, okay, well, I know where I'm going to get that problem solved. I liked working with that person. I trust them. So this is the phone call I'm going to make.
Yep. And I would add to, thinking of your ideal customer, think a lot about some of the soft attributes. So not only it's the most profitable
Right.
client, typically it's not.
Actually, no,
It can be.
they're a lot
It
of times
can
they're
be.
not.
But it's the type of person that they are. It's the type of work that you're doing for them that energizes you instead of saps you of energy. And you want more of those because then your life becomes easier. And my favorite client has referred me to other clients for exactly the type of work that I want to do. And I didn't even have to ask this person. I should probably be better about it. That's why I had to go back and listen to the Michelle Blakely episode. But I think not only in terms of don't just look at the spreadsheet and say, all right, who makes us the most money? It's the customers that bring you the most joy, the best work, the most satisfaction. And that's what you want to replicate
Hmm.
because I've had very profitable clients that are not the most fun.
Right.
That's not
Agree.
today, though. Of course, all of my current clients are just awesome and perfect. So, all right, final thoughts on the sales funnel,
Well,
marketing
I
funnel.
think what we're talking about is harder in larger organizations. So I just think you have to figure out how to break this down in a larger organization. And yeah, I think this goes to probably our conversation with Nikki Little, which is integrated communications, right? That
Hmm.
you have to integrate sales and marketing. And um, so understanding each other's funnels is important, but then also understanding those prospects and ideal prospects, and then putting action, I think, to a lot of the things that we just talked about, right? So if you want to go ask for referrals, like how do you create a process to sort of empower your salespeople to go and ask their top three, right? I don't
Hmm.
think you want that to happen sort of randomly or organically. Like it typically happens when you put a process behind it. You train the team, and it doesn't have to be a long, lengthy training. It could be a 30-minute. Here's what we want you to
Hmm.
do. Here's why we want you to do it. Here's how we want you to approach it. Now you add your unique, it's your account, it's your client. So you add your unique spin on it, but now go and do it and then report back to us on success, right? Find a way to measure it. So I think in a larger organizations, you really have to kind of break that down, which I think is, at least from my perspective, what I see is a little bit more difficult to do in smaller organizations like what we have, just a Kaleidoscope or Creative Mill. It's like, well, we're the owners, we're the marketing people, we're the salespeople, we have all of these hats, so it's pretty easy for me to just jot down on a piece of paper today. This is a to do, and I'm going to go do this. I'm going to call my top three and have a conversation. So
Yep.
you got to take a little bit more time in a larger organization and thought process, and then make it a repeatable behavior.
Yep. Great. And then my final takeaway was a homework assignment. If listeners are interested, is I would put pen to paper and get a committee together if you have to do it. But if you haven't done this already, map out the customer journey with the major milestones. So not the day that they called you up and say, "Hey, we're thinking of hiring a blah blah blah." It's think through the whole process from before they're even in market. And then what are the major milestones? Map that to either the AIDA model or the race model, and then map content approaches or marketing approaches and tactics to the various touch points, and then it should become clear what assets you need and how you're going to strategize to create, follow and nurture, I should say not follow, lead and nurture the prospect through the journey. And you said you wear a lot of hats. This happens to be my favorite hat of all that you wear, Curtis. So I will thank you for donning it once again, staying on brand, and
Hats off to you.
my hat's already off to you. So it's sitting right there. I could have grabbed it. All right. So see you next time, everyone, on Bullhorns and Bullseyes.